what's up YouTube? It is Melanie back with Melanie Loves Death Metal. I'm gonna do a video dedicated to talk about the new Torture Rack album that comes out this Friday on 20 Bucks Spin called Primeval Onslaught. I don't have my physical release yet, which is okay. I've been able to listen to the album for a couple weeks now, and I finally am gonna get around to recording a video and talking about it. So why am I talking about this album? Dedicated video, a review on my channel. I guess it's kind of a review. Because I really love this band. They were put on my radar in the height of the pandemic in 2021 when they released their EP called Pit of Limbs, and ever since then I've just been a huge fan of them. So if you're not familiar, they're a band from Portland, Oregon. They have two other albums out called Barbaric Persecution and then Malefic Humiliation. First one came out in 2015, the other one was I think 2018, a couple years later. And those two albums, admittedly, I had never heard up until I heard their EP Pit of Limbs that came out a couple years ago. It's very much, I would say those first two albums, including the EP, are very ferocious and very, like, they've got some grind essence littered into the albums. There's also that filthy, like, brutal, not like brutal death metal, but like ferocious and brutal sounding, like bone crushing death metal. And that's what kind of made them unique to me. And it's just fun in general to listen to. They just got that dirty filthiness, that barbaric type of death metal chaos within their albums. So they're now on 20 Bucks Spin. They've got a new album coming out this Friday. Was happy to see they got picked up by 20 Bucks Spin. I think that they fit the bill of that label perfectly in terms of the type of music that they play and just the overall, like, you know, persona of the band and the type of music that they write and just all those types of things. And yeah, I am not disappointed by any means. I don't think that it's really strayed too far away from their first album at all. It's still very much a Torture Rack album. I would say the one thing that I've noticed about this album that makes it slightly different, actually a little bit more different, not just slightly, than their past albums, is that it's a little bit more of a slower tempoed album, not too much. And it reminds me very much of early 90s Cannibal Corpse, like Chris Barnes era, almost teetering on just a tiny bit of Vile, a little bit there. And then there's also that awesomeness of the bass line that reminds me of DiGiorgio from Autopsy. Like, that Autopsy bass line is still very much present in there. It's a 26-minute album, which, you know, it's Torture Rack. They don't write long songs by any means. Some of the songs are only around 40 seconds, and that's just, that's a theme across their other records. So that's why I think a lot of people assume that they're a death grind album, or band, and like I said, there's definitely that grind essence on their other albums, but I don't hear it too much on this one. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, the shorter style of death metal songs, but it's very much more of a primitive sounding death metal record. A standard meat and potato, Torture Rack, Pit of Bones, whatever. Anyway, Meat and Potatoes death metal album, which is not bad by any means. The brutality is still there. The grotesque is still there. That murky, filthy sounding death metal is still there. The production is a little bit murky sounding compared to their other albums. Their other albums had like that really dirty, crunchy kind of sounding production sound. And this one has more of like a murkier, almost a little bit muddier, like old school death metal sound. Not crazy by any means whatsoever. It doesn't completely change the way a Torture Rack sounds or anything like that. So don't assume that it just sounds completely different from their other albums. It's still very much a Torture Rack album, hands down. Like I said, it's still very much, their filthiness is still very much in the sound. I don't think the essence of their grind not being on this album is bad by any means. It's definitely like more like a 90s old school death metal record than the others have been. The others have that sound too, but I think this one more hones in on it than their past albums did. For the most part, they haven't strayed away from their identity or from their past sound by any means. It's still very much Torture Rack. It's fun, it's brutal, it's bone crushing. I think like in the promos, they go really far into saying it's like greased flesh savagery, which is, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it sounds like. How does it stack up to their other 2 albums? Do I like it better than their other 2 albums? I don't necessarily have like a strong opinion on that, because the other 2 albums are so much fun and they're very quick listens. I think they're still in between 30 and 20 minutes both. And like they both, the first 2 albums sound very much the same and similar, and there's a lot of similarities to those albums. And if you were to put them all in one playlist, I would probably, if I hadn't listened to them so much and had known them, I probably would assume that they were the same album. And then if this one came on after that, I would know this is a different album. And to me, I feel like this is a much more mature album in terms of the maturity that they can get to, in terms of their songwriting and in terms of just the overall music structure that they have on here. But it doesn't completely remove their identity, like I've said several times. It's a fun death metal record. It's one of those albums that I will probably pull off the shelf quite a bit over the next couple years. Something that I just will want to kick back and relax to. That's right, I said relax. The other 2 albums are just a little bit more raw and chaotic. And I'm not always in the mood for that kind of a death metal style. And I think this one has toned down that chaos just a little bit more. But again, there's still elements of that on this album. It's just not all the way through like their past releases. All in all, I think it's my favorite release out of their albums, is what I'm trying to say. TLDR. It's my favorite album of their releases so far. I think there's a maturity of the band in this, an approach that they're going towards that I appreciate and I really enjoy, without removing their identity of what made me, you know, fall in love with the band when I first heard them. I think I am just really excited for future releases that they're going to put out. And yeah, it's just a standard great death metal record. They're not rewriting the book of death metal here. There's not much variance outside of other things that you've heard before. But it is one of those things where it adds to your repertoire of albums that you can listen to. And it's not bad, it's not hokey, and it's not cheesy or anything like that. So definitely check it out. It's the full album stream is on the 20 Buck Spin YouTube now. That'll be the link in the description. Vinyls, tapes, and CDs, t-shirts, all that stuff is released this Friday. Definitely worth checking out. Probably going to be one of my favorite releases this year so far in terms of death metal. One of the ones I've been more excited about, that's for sure. And I just am, I think it's great. I think it's a good album in terms of just that, you know, your regular standard death metal that you're going to enjoy, with, you know, their essence that they have of their brutality and their primitiveness, and their sound. Also, my son is playing Spider-Man on the PlayStation in the other room, and he gets really into it. So I'm sure you've been hearing that. Welcome to summer where my family is home while I try to record videos. So that's all I had for you guys today. I think it's a good album. Check it out. Definitely worthy of a listen, that's for sure. And when I get the physical release, I'll show it off in a collection update. I'm excited to get it. I ordered the tape and the vinyl because I have all of their albums on tape or CD. I don't own any on vinyl, but you know, 20 Buck Spin is known for pressing great vinyl and tons of variants. So I bought it, and I try to be like more format agnostic in terms of bands, but this one, whatever. So check them out, links in the description. Let me know what you think. That's all that I have today, and I'll see you in the next one.